Diane? It's currently 11:30 a.m. and I'm about to record a video on Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks was a show and I'm going to basically talk to my fellow photographers about some of the visual and somewhat non-visual ideas or lessons that we can take from this show. And I hope that I'm right. Now, if you haven't forgotten already, Twin Peaks was located 5 miles south of the Canadian border, 12 miles west of the state line. It's a place full of trees, full of howls, and full of mysteries. And I guess that I'm also going to enjoy a damn good cup of coffee and 10 donuts, all jelly. Can't go wrong with that. So if you'll excuse me, Diane, I guess that I'll start this video now. Twin Peaks revolves around an investigation surrounding the murder of a local teenage girl named Laura Palmer. This investigation is led by the local police department in collaboration with an FBI agent named Dale Cooper. And as he spends more and more time at the place and investigates the incident further and further, discovers that this apparently simple crime is not that simple after all, and that in Twin Peaks, everyone seems to have something to hide. So when we talk about Twin Peaks or the aesthetics of Twin Peaks, I always say that it reminds me of it's a very defined contrast. And what I mean by this is that this contrast is something that is not so much of a visual nature. Yes, it has a visual nature, such as colors, the use of light, darkness, etc. But also on a formal level, with the insert of supernatural elements, the storylines, the characters, the somewhat awkwardness of certain events in the show, and certain ways that characters behave themselves. And I think that what is interesting to observe here is how these two worlds collide. And the first world is the world of a small town, which, despite the fact that Twin Peaks in reality is a fictional town, it does have a lot of imagery and has a lot of ties to the ideas that we have of a small American town. It has like the high school, the proms, the small diners, the community, the sense of everyone knowing everyone else. And then we have a second world which is really, well, let's say strange, but also abstract, creepy at times, undefined, and supernatural. There's a lot of supernatural elements, fantastic elements, horror elements. And so putting this in photography terms, this is kind of like a advice or visual lessons that you can take if you're a photographer or filmmaker or a visual creator that is interested in having or creating surrealist images, in creating oniric images that still have a foot in reality, or that still have somewhat a connection of some sort with reality. And or well, when I say reality, I say like a town or a world or a person or whatever it is that you're trying to explore. And I think Twin Peaks can give you a lot of information on how to, especially if you're working on a project, how to interconnect two different worlds, how to express yourself in terms of putting that surrealism there. And I think it's really interesting, and you should really have a look at Twin Peaks. Continuing this line of thinking about contrast, I think it's important to look at the color in Twin Peaks, as I believe its use is quite important in the solidification of the universe. And if we start by paying attention to this, then we notice that even in the opening credits, the lettering is quite different than what we would expect. We have these warm colors and these small town images that gives us the setting, and then we have these thick green titles, which to me tells me that something is definitely clashing and not quite right. And in this case, we can assume that Twin Peaks' color palette really serves as a sort of storytelling device, has a way of informing us visually about some character or event that takes place. So from wood walls covered in red and black shapes, we also have red curtains, red seats, red neons, red dresses, and red lips. And this, of course, can have many different meanings. But the way I would read this, let's say, use of red, this expressive use of red, is to kind of like a constant reminder of the underlying evil force that moves around the town. And I mean, I don't want to say too much because some of you might not reach the show to the end, or some of you might not be familiar and are just curious about the show and are watching this, and so I don't want to spoil it for you. And these things can be read in various different ways, and that's what I like the most about the work of David Lynch, and in specific Twin Peaks, which is the level of abstraction that it has in a way that it allows you to come in with your subjectivity and read it in many different ways. I can read it in one way, you can read it in another way, but definitely it opens a lot of questions, it leaves a lot for you to fill in, and I like that as a viewer. But I would say, returning to the point, that if you're definitely looking to know more about color, the use of color, the contrast between warmth and darkness, the use of both as a meaning of expression, then definitely, or to create meaning, then definitely you should have a look at Twin Peaks. Or maybe if you watch it, just rewatch it, because that's exactly what I'm doing. Composition, as you know, it's one of those key aspects in image creation, because usually composition shows us a point of view. It shows us information that is relevant for the scene, the character of people on screen, the mood we're creating, etc. And from what I understand, Twin Peaks was also different from other TV shows at the time because of the way it was shot. According to some information I came across, Twin Peaks wasn't shot in a standard multi-camera setup as usually TV shows are. Instead, it really presents the viewers with beautiful compositions, long takes, low angles, and movements that made it stand out and be recognized as a cinematic TV content. If I remember correctly, one of the cinematographers of Twin Peaks said in an interview that it was David Lynch's intention to have a warm look because he wanted all of this evil to come out from a warm setting. And when we put this into perspective, there are a great number of shots and scenes that work this through composition. And composition translates a sort of dystopian idea of the American small town, which goes, I believe, hand in hand with one of the most quoted lines of the series, which is, "The owls are not what they seem." And so the way I make this sort of bridge between Twin Peaks and what this can tell us with, well, as film photographers or photographers in general, I would say that this reminds us of composing with intention, and also of something really, really important, which is if you, on that side of the camera or on that side of the screen, take a photo, if you take a photo and you show it to me, that photo, at least the way I envision your photo, is your way of showing me your world, your way of seeing the world. It's a window to your world. So it's very important for us to keep this in mind, because sometimes composition is a point of view, unless you're doing something that needs to be completely, let's say, abstract, or let's say, not abstract is not really the word, but it needs to be neutral as to its point of view. Other than that, I will say that you compose in a certain way because that's the way you see it. And that's why my composition of the same piece or the same person of the same car or whatever will be different, because everyone sees the world differently. And with this being said, I also add that this shows us, in terms of composition, that you shouldn't be afraid of trying. You shouldn't be afraid of getting close to the person. If you want to shoot someone who's, well, if you want to take a portrait of someone who's really, really important to you, who's really, really dear to you, don't be afraid of getting close to the person, of, shoving the camera in their face. But, well, I would say that's kind of awkward, but still, if it's your thing, it's your thing. But if you're photographing a building, a town, wherever it is, don't be afraid to experiment, to be or to take a photo as you would see it, as you would have to describe it. Because sometimes this is a very important notion, especially if you're creating artworks, photos and whatnot that is for somebody else to see. But yeah, I guess that composition with meaning and intention is the probably biggest take that we can conclude from here. Who knows? There is more, but I don't want the video to be an hour and a half, so yeah. I think when we talk about abstraction in dreams, in a way we're talking about two different things that are only united due to the fact that they require you to be subjective as a creator and as a viewer. And these two, dreams and abstraction, are extremely important aspects in the series. And what I'm going to say now is something that I have been practicing over the years, and Twin Peaks really inspired me to do that, which is to make photos that create this necessity of the viewer to escape, to sort of leave the real world and wonder about the image. It can be real, but in many ways it can't. And when it comes to abstraction, my way of framing people in the landscape, usually far away and at specific points of the composition, is how I try to bring some subjectivity and questions to the table. Rather than see who these people were and what they're doing, I leave a lot of questions which at the end of the day are nothing but abstractions. And Twin Peaks showed me this necessity of thinking and including what is often ignored, which is the holes we have in our lives. So I feel that this has become more about my photography than actually Twin Peaks, so I'll switch it up a little bit. Basically, watching Twin Peaks was a really good exercise for me as a visual creator, because it really reminded me of the importance of those holes in life that we can't understand, that we will perhaps not understand ever, but it's what we call abstraction. And it reminded me of the importance of exploring stuff that sometimes doesn't necessarily have a cause or an identifiable cause and not an immediate consequence. Those questions that sometimes I don't have answers for, such as why my granddad loves pickles so much and why my Aunt Fanny is still single and will be single for a really long time. But that's, I think, besides the point. The point is that this subjectivity should not be ignored in photography, filmmaking, videography, installations, whatever it is that you're doing. Things sometimes are too objective, and I think to go beyond that and let your art talk about you, talk to you and others is something absolutely imperative. And so Twin Peaks, with its many dreams, many nightmares, surrealism, abstraction, whatever else, horror, has shown us a different perspective of life and has shown us the many hidden treasures of life, and definitely has put a lot of things in perspective and has questioned reality and a lot of things that we take as granted. And so I think this is a good exercise to watch Twin Peaks and think of this and apply this to our daily life and to our photography or whatever medium we take in our ventures through the world of art, filmmaking, sculpture, writing, etc. And if you are watching this video and you haven't watched Twin Peaks yet, I mean, what the hell are you waiting for? Hey Diane, guess what? What did a donut say to the other donut?
Ah,